Hello everyone, welcome to the latest video in the series where we talk about the real life cars that inspired the original car liveries that exist in Gran Turismo. This time it's Gran Turismo Concept 2002 Tokyo-Geneva. Previously we discussed the cars in Gran Turismo 1 and 2, and while the game's creators did take away the much loved racing modification feature beginning with Gran Turismo 3, there are still some cars we can discuss. As a reminder, we're just talking about liveries that were made up by the devs and designers at Polyphony Digital. Not any real-life licensed cars. Also, I'll exclude any vehicles that made their debuts on Gran Turismo 3, which was released before GT Concept, as I'll save them for the GT3 version of this video, which is still in the works. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started. We begin with the Mitsubishi CZ3 tarmac rally car. Of course you'll notice that this car looks like several other Mitsubishi cars from past games in the series. Most notably the Lancer Evolution 4 rally car. In real life the car was driven by Tommi Mäkinen in the World Rally Championship in 1997 and the first 4 races of 1998. There is more than one colour available though. That was the red stripe version, now here's the CZ3 with the blue stripe. This seems to be based on the Galant driven by Michael Gerber in the 1990 Monte Carlo Rally, where he finished 18th. There's also a version with a green stripe available. Although this doesn't seem to be based on a real life car, it's possibly inspired by one of the racing modifications from Gran Turismo 1 for the Mitsubishi FTO. If it is, then that's a really nice throwback from the developers. There's also a grey livery too, but I can't find any real life cars that share it. Next is the Honda NSXR prototype race car. This might be a familiar one, as there was a separate car on the Japanese version of Gran Turismo 1 that was also inspired by the same real life car. There were 2 NSXs entered by Honda at Le Mans in 1995. The number 46 car was driven by Hideki Okada, Philippe Favre and Naoki Hattori, and sadly it was not classified. The number 47 car was driven by Armin Hahne, Bertrand Gachot and Ivan Capelli, and unfortunately failed to finish. And now we have the Nissan 350Z Concept LM race car, another car to make its debut on Gran Turismo Concept. Again, we've seen a livery like this before in the series, on the Nissan 300ZX. In fact, this car is likely based on the 300ZXs that were manufactured between 1989 and 1995 for endurance racing. These race cars won the 1994 24 Hours of Daytona overall, won in class at the 1994 24 Hours of Le Mans, and won IMSA Manufacturers and Drivers Championships in 92 and 94. Next is the Ford GT40. Now this is the concept version of what would eventually become the Ford GT, I believe, and its inspiration should be pretty clear. The original Ford GT40s from the 1960s, the ones that won 4 Le Mans in a row. Well, specifically it's based on the famous Gulf liveried cars, driven in 1968 and 1969. In 1968, Pedro Rodriguez and Lucien Bianchi took the crown, and in 1969 it was the 2 Jackies, Jackie Oliver and Jackie X, who won. Another new car to the series at this point was the Mazda RX8 Concept LM race car. The livery of this car is inspired by another car that features in the Gran Turismo series, the Mazda 787B, the one that won Le Mans in 1991. It was driven by Volker Weidler, Johnny Herbert and Bertrand Gachot. Now we come to the Nissan MMR Cup Car 01. There are several colours of this car to choose, and they're likely based, to some extent, on the Nissan Micra Cup, which has been run in Japan for many years. However, there really don't seem to be many photos of the Micra Cup prior to the more recent seasons, so it's hard to say whether this car was directly inspired by one of the team's liveries in the Cup. But we can see some competitors from the early to mid 2000s which definitely resemble the car that exists on Gran Turismo Concept. Next is the Toyota RSC Rally Car, a vehicle that would also go on to feature in future games in the Gran Turismo series. This fictional rally car was inspired by the Toyota Corolla driven by Carlos Sainz in the 1998 World Rally Championship, where he finished second in the championship. This was Sainz's first season back with the Toyota team, and he stayed on with the team in the following year as well. However, we can tell that it's based on the 1998 car because of the number 5 on the side. In 99, Sainz wore number 3 instead. Now we come to the Mazda 6 LM edition, which is called the Mazda Atenza in North America. In fact, the Japanese version of the game, named Gran Turismo Concept 2001 Tokyo, had a version of this car that looked quite different to the one that we got here in the UK. Anyway, this appears to be potentially entirely made up by the game's creators. However, I did find an example of a yellow and blue Mazda, which might have inspired one of the car's liveries. It's the FC3S RX7 IMSA GTO, which competed at Le Mans in 1994 under Team Art Nature, and finished a respectable 15th overall. It was driven by Yujiro Terada, Frank Freyon and Pierre Dutroisi. Also, there was a Mazda 787B that ran at Le Mans in 1991, which the white livery of the Mazda Atenza LM edition on the Japanese version of the game seems to replicate. Not the famous one that won, but another car entered by Mazda that finished a still respectable 6th. It was driven by David Kennedy, Stefan Johansson and Maurizio Sandro Sala. And sadly, we're already at the last car in the video, as there aren't that many original liveries on Gran Turismo Concept. However, we end on a good one, the Nissan GTR LM Concept. The inspiration for this car isn't as straightforward as you might think. It hasn't been taken from another Skyline. It's actually from the real-life Nissan R391, the successor of the famous R390, which entered Le Mans in 1999. Despite one of the R391s crashing during qualifying, the other made it onto the grid, qualifying 12th, and was driven by Michael Krum, Satoshi Motoyama and Eric Comas. Sadly, it ran as high as 4th before suffering an electrical problem. The R391 only competed at one other race, the Fuji 1000 km, also in 1999. It beat the Toyota GT1 by a single lap to be crowned the winner. Again, it was driven by Eric Comas and Satoshi Motoyama, but Masami Kageyama joined them instead. Do you know of any other real-life cars that inspired the vehicles in Gran Turismo Concept? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.